Happy Halloween, nerds! So last time when I covered Shadow Under Devil's Reef, I briefly covered the Corpse That Love build, and that's what we're doing today. The Corpse That Love build is a level 2 DCC scenario by Stephen Newen, and it is a really fun little scenario. This module can easily be done in one shot. You might stretch it to two if you're somebody who likes to have a very heavy RP sort of group, but overall this is a very simple, straightforward dungeon that shouldn't take you more than like a 4-hour session. I've run this now twice, and I believe both times we're able to finish it in about 3 hours. I'm a big fan of the vibe this module has because it has this sort of like silver screen Universal Monsters sort of feel to it. I think it fits really well at DCC because I think the whole DCC and sort of greater OSR sphere is all about the nostalgia of a period long gone, so I think this fits very well. Before I get into spoilers, I think the big thing is that I don't really have any criticism for this module. Like anything, it's not like a perfect module or anything. If I really want to be nitty gritty, I think I could pick at a few things. There's a few encounters sort of early on that could be, tuned up a little bit, but there's nothing that stands out to me where I go, you need to know this will really affect how you play it. I think if you just want a straightforward dungeon with a spooky kind of vibe, this is right there for you. So as usual, the quick review is that I do recommend this. In terms of content warnings though, I would say there is quite a bit of body horror in this. Now, that's something you might want to bring up with your group or anybody else, or if you're somebody who's interested in this but you don't want any spoilers, and if that turns you off, you should know there's a lot of body horror, as well as what I would say would fall under animal cruelty. Not animal cruelty in the sense that you're gonna like see a dog tortured on screen kind of thing, more just that there's lots of those mad scientist experiments that involve animals, and that could be uncomfortable to some people, so just keep that in mind. But let's get into spoilers now. This probably has one of my favorite openings when it comes to DCC scenarios, not because it's doing anything necessarily new, it just has a crazy old priest. And if you know me, I love playing crazy characters. But you hear him say, like,
They say I'm mad. Azazel's the mad one.
So the players start in this church, and you have it at night in this town. It's raining and lightning, all that sort of atmosphere of just that very classic feel. So the sermon consists of this Father Gerald going on about how he's had a vision that the crazy old elf doctor / wizard type over in his tower just across the way is doing some evil stuff, and he's going off and having this sort of crazy thing. I would really play it up. He's a very colorful character. You have the townspeople kind of snickering and laughing at him as he's doing this. I believe he's even like rubbing like old blood from like a saint all over his face. Like, it gets really nuts and out there. He's really supposed to be sort of that harbinger kind of character in horror movies, but really turned up. That's when the sermon's disrupted by the doors swinging open, and you have these sort of ragdoll clay golems coming in and just attacking and murdering people, and of course the PCs will fight them off. That's where Father Joel's going to ask them to go deal with this elf wizard scientist guy, who I'm just going to call Geisterblut because he has this really long name and has like that German B in it, so I think it's Weissgrass of Geisterblut, so I'm just going to say Geisterblut. And with a name like that, when the players finally meet him near the end of the dungeon, you could give him some crazy, really bad German accent. Getting to the actual dungeon, like I said, it's pretty straightforward, but it's very cool, very atmospheric. I recommend taking inspiration from the same place that the book is, and really have like the lightning cracking across the tower and the rain coming down, and the tower itself is super cool. I really like the way it looks on the cover. I think all the blues with the big sort of hand outstretched, I think looks really awesome. And on the map, it's actually so well done because it's a really simple dungeon, but it looks really good, which I like, because oftentimes I'll find that a lot of people have a hard time making a really cool looking dungeon and not making it way overly complex. But you have essentially a very simple, I wouldn't so much say linear, because you can actually go the wrong way if you so choose as players, but the players will have a few incentives to go the path the dungeon wants them to. The tower's on the side of a cliff. It has a moat and a wall. Now, the moat and the wall are fine. There's a little bit of an encounter there with some fleshy, like, contraptions that are supposed to sort of look like armed guards. These mechanical guards in the guardhouse are a pretty good little indicator at first about what this guy is capable of, making these completely autonomous guards that can fire off a little bit. They're still very clunky, very primitive. And the encounter after that is also another little indicator that's really good. This one, I think, is the first real good encounter you'll have in the game. At least in my opinion. I found the guardhouse stuff sort of just totally fine. Totally serviceable. Nothing to really write home about. You have these weird, horrifying, what they're called weredoggins. And they're just these really abominable sort of dog creatures that have this strange form of lycanthropy. And this lycanthropy won't really come up in terms of this scenario, but as part of a greater campaign, it could be a good thing to have either to get rid of or to use. It's a type of lycanthropy that's not triggered by the full moon, but it's fully by will. And I think that's pretty fun. And that's sort of stuff that you can use more in a bigger campaign. Lycanthropy is always fun. I don't see it that often. It's you'll have these sort of were creatures a lot in games, but I often don't have a chance to use them. So I think if you have this perfect great campaign, definitely see if you can at least get a bite on somebody and have them have to deal with it if they fail that save. Lycanthropy is always a fun thing to deal with, especially if they're good characters. That can always really mess the PCs, have a little bit of an internal struggle that has an actual physical manifestation, which I think is fun. Now, during all this, the players might notice that at the top of the tower, at the outstretched hand, there is a big metal cage that has somebody in it, and it looks like lightning is striking that cage. You can hear sort of screams on the wind coming from it. Both the screams emanating from the cage as well as lightning hitting it will be a pretty good indicator for the players that that's where they need to go. Part of what Gerald has said is that, there's people in this town of Portnail going missing. I think they're at like a few dozen have already started missing. So that's a pretty good idea of like, oh, that might be a missing villager or might be several missing villagers. We need to find a way up there. Because where the dungeon ends is underground at the bottom, which the players can go to immediately, but they're obviously going to realize if we don't get to that person up there that's screaming and obviously being tortured or in pain or something, they are going to die. The tower has two doors leading into it, and this first floor is all connected. It just goes room to room to room, and you can sort of see through all of them pretty easily outside of like some darkness. But all on the left are stairs that lead all the way up the outstretched arm, and on the right, there are stairs that lead down to the further parts of the dungeon. But on this first floor, this is some really, really fun stuff that I like quite a bit. I think this floor sets the tone really well. You have one room that is just filled with all these different pictures of this redhead woman in different poses, different sizes. There's notes. There's a lot you can gain from this on this doctor. It's still not fully clear what's going on with him, but the players will get a pretty good idea of what's happening. And to kind of hear a little bit, just to explain to you guys what's going on. So this Dr. Geistsplit was a victim of xenophobia, being an elf. Classic mob villagers with pitchforks and torches. Not a fan of an elf being in love and having a relationship with a human woman. It leads to them, I believe, murdering the woman. And he's ever since been trying to bring her back to life and sort of recreate her. And a lot of the parts of this dungeon reflect that. And this room is all the different pictures of her in different poses and that sort of thing, and just redhead women, or at least women that look like her. And in the room next to this one, you see a bunch of weird experiments. And this is where the body horror stuff really begins for the players. But some of the fun stuff is like the elven tapeworm in a jar that if they open it up will jump out and basically try and slide down their throat. It's a really disgusting scene that I had a lot of fun doing. The players, they all, of course, hated it. And you have like a lizard that sucks luck, and you have a few other things in there. And there's a lot more of that sort of stuff. Down in the dungeon below, you have like a big troll brain with a bunch of like electrodes stuck into it. You have like those were-doggons I mentioned earlier. So there's a lot of themes of basically messing with life and death and trying to sort of recreate it. So the players can pretty easily piece together what's happening as it goes on. And basically the arm extending up to the sky is really fun. It's a spiral tower. There's a mythical cord going from the cage that the woman is in all the way down to the woman that Geistsplit trying to bring back as his beloved. And that spiral staircase leads all the way up to the trap door leading to that palm of that hand. That's a very fun scene as lightning is cracking this cage. They're out in the high winds and the rain, and they're trying to not get completely fried, trying to get her out of there. There's also a trap at the top of the stairs, which causes like the first like 10 stairs to crumble. And in that game, I had a wizard who had summoned a bear and was riding that bear up through the stairs. And what ended up happening was they went there first, they tried opening it up, that happened, and the whole bear tumbled down through the middle with the wizard on top and just got crushed by the weight of their own summoned bear. I will say, for that group, that wasn't all wizard party, and the horror was kind of lost on us in that one. There wasn't much of an emphasis on it. It became much more of a classic goofy DCC game. Not bad by any means, but it was definitely more slapstick and a lot less scary than what I was going for. And that pretty much covers the first two floors for the most part. And so the dungeon part of this, dungeon, is really more on the horror side. They really dial it up. You find some pretty horrifying stuff, like a bunch of corpses, a massive hill giant brain with electrodes into it that the players can hook themselves up to and basically go a little bit crazy as they get some of the memories of the hill giant, which their brain just isn't really designed to, meld with. Just the aftermath of a lot of horrible experiments, as well as some experiments in transit still. And then we get to the puzzle door that I really, really enjoyed. I talked about it a little bit in the last video, and I'll explain why now with a little bit more context why I like it so much. And the reason why I like it is that it isn't just a random puzzle, and it's not one that's sort of meant to be kind of frustrating or overly complex. It's a very simple, have you been paying attention to the scenario so far? If you have, then you should be able to get this pretty fast. It also is another thing that I like a lot. The book also says other ways how you can bypass it, using like a gaseous form spell to go underneath the door, a knock spell, a really good lockpick, and check trap check. I really like that. For me, it doesn't really matter. I've said before in other videos, but the book's not my boss. I'll do whatever the hell I want. But I'm also somebody who's run enough games where I have the confidence to just do that, and that's sort of my playstyle anyway. But there's a lot of people who buy modules because they don't either have the confidence, or they don't have the time, or they are just looking to see what they're supposed to be doing in the game before they run their own stuff. And I find the problem often comes in when you have this thing where it's like, this is the only answer. And that's not really how I do riddles and puzzles in general anyway. There's almost always, here's a problem, and I'll let the player solve it. And usually what I'm looking for is just a really good idea and a good roll, and that will usually get you past most things. I might have an answer in mind that if the player's getting frustrated, don't know, I will use that. But in general, I'm pretty good with any sort of creativity because it's more about the fun of coming up with an answer more than making sure the players get your answer. So I like that a lot on this one because I believe it was Jules the Carnifex where there was that puzzle door right at the beginning and it says you can't open this by magical means. And I just kind of went, fuck that, because the actual puzzle for that didn't really matter and it wasn't that fun. But anyway, enough of me going on about this. I think I've talked about door puzzles and my dislike for them in like 3 videos now, so it's gonna start becoming a meme if I keep doing it. As for the puzzle itself, it's this banded door with 3 big dials on it. The top band symbol is wave, fire, lightning, and rock. The middle band symbol is gold, silver, electrum, mithril. And the bottom band is dragon, vampire, giant, and pterodactyl. So with that, the only one that might be a little bit confusing for a lot of people would probably be the bottom one. Because the first 2, if you were running through the dungeon, you would go, oh, well, that's lightning, because all the lightning that's been hitting the top. And then as it goes down, there's that big mithril core that you couldn't not notice as players as you go up the tower. So the next one's mithril. The bottom one is trickiest because it does have a few sort of clues here and there. You have the hill giant brain. You have a few different things like with the really big pictures, and you have some other stuff. So the answer is giant. But I could see players potentially thinking it's vampire just because of the whole vibe so far is very gothic. It has a universal monsters, might go Bela Lugosi vampire more than Frankenstein, that sort of stuff, or Frankenstein's monster. But as you can see, overall, it's a pretty simple little one, and the players are just rewarded for just putting like a little bit of thought. And I think those are the best kinds of puzzles. I think the ones that really, really make you think can be fun if you're into that, or if that's what you're going for as part of it. But this is just a way to open up the final encounter with Geisterblut and his big mommy giant goth GF. Pretty good final encounter design because you have a wizard in the back and you have the giant tank woman in the front, and I had her grab like a big thigh leg out of one of the buckets and just go ham with that, swinging at the players, just for that fun sort of macabre kind of weapon to be using in this fight. And so it's a really well designed one, just having classic glass cannon in the back. So it's not an impossible fight, but it is a very hard fight, especially when you have a wizard on the other side who can do some crazy stuff. That's pretty much the entire dungeon. I obviously did skip over a few things here and there. I like to leave some stuff for you guys to discover yourself, but overall, that is what you're getting in this one. I highly recommend this as like just a Halloween one-shot or just a classic little horror one-shot. It doesn't necessarily feed into any sort of bigger campaign, though it can easily be put into one. You can just have the players being in a town for that sort of thing. It could be a little side thing. But one thing I see about like Shadow Under Devil's Reef is that it could still being a fantastic sort of kickstart to a more sea-based campaign. This one feels a lot more like the Halloween episode of a TV show, which isn't a bad thing at all. And you can just stop whatever you guys are doing and maybe just have like a small little spooky scenario for a little bit and then go back to whatever you're doing once Halloween's over. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you guys have a happy Halloween.